As we celebrate our 60th anniversary, we are excited about the future. We are well aware of the many challenges still which we have to face.
So I miss it in a way in that I'm not in the leadership, but I don't in a way because I am very involved as an ordinary member.
As we celebrate ICJ Kenya's 60th anniversary, what we're calling ICJ at 60, it gives me excitement because it is truly a celebration.
I must say that we never gave up the dream, we continue the dream, and that's why today ICJ as our home.
And I hope that in the 15 years that we're looking ahead to, ICJ will be having its own niche cut out better than what we have.
The Kenyan section of the International Commission of Jurists, ICJ Kenya, is a non-governmental membership organization constituting of a body of jurists drawn from members of the bench and bar in Kenya and the region. It is the only autonomous national section of the International Commission of Jurists based in Geneva.
The difference between ICJ Kenya and of course other organizations, and of course talking of other organizations would be similar organizations in the civil society movement, would be one is that we are internationally affiliated and we operate within Africa. So unlike other organizations which basically will operate in Kenya, our mandate covers the entire of Africa.
Founded in 1959, ICJ Kenya is the oldest human rights organization in Kenya.
As the oldest human rights institute in Kenya, ICJ has a very strong reputation. Many consider it to be the ultimate human rights institute, and it has nurtured many prominent figures. Amongst them are prominent people in the judiciary, in the bar, and in academia.
In 1961, ICJ Kenya had about 20 members who met regularly, with the hope of expanding its membership as it had settled several activities such as political and racial problems.
ICJ is a membership organization. We have members drawn from the lawyers, the prosecutors, the judges. And what we do is we give, we undertake capacity building, we give programs sent to various organizations, including our members.
ICJ Kenya is celebrating its 60th anniversary this year. 2019 will mark 6 decades of ICJ Kenya's continued work in promoting progressive democracy, good governance, social cohesion, respect of the rule of law, promotion of human rights, and accountability in Kenya and the region.
We celebrate at ICJ Kenya at this time because we have faced different systems, different government regimes, and we remain standing strong. We have faced times of turbulence, and we have been able to overcome because our work has spoken for itself.
ICJ's Kenya's 60 years is a story that has stood the test of time and has remained relevant to the changing times in pursuit of its core efforts to ensure that a free, just, and equitable society is realized.
Actually, this was a very interesting time because citizens were trying to push the boundaries of the space of human rights, and there was tension between the state and the civil society organizations.
Sisi tuseme kwamba tufungue, tuondoe ile section ya katiba ya Kenya ya 2A.
That was the period during which the government of Kenya was single party, was KANU controlled and KANU managed, and KANU was then enjoying power without competition. And one of the problems that ICJ had to grapple with is working for the return or the restoration of your multi-party system.
The institution's advocacy efforts and key achievements are true testament of its impact throughout Kenya and the region.
ICJ also worked very closely with various members of parliament and especially the Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament to lobby and advocate for change of various laws for improvement of human rights situation and rule of law.
The struggle for multi-party politics, KANU reforms, law reforms around the elections and public liberties, constitutional review, ICJ Kenya took a more activist role and incubates at least 5 serious civil society organizations, including Center of Governance and Development, National Coalition Executive Council, Citizens Coalition for Constitutional Change, to mobilize public voice in political struggle, and pursues a deliberate policy of partnership with activist civil society organizations and donors.
Is that ICJ was able to support the human rights organizations which did not have a home. So we were home to a lot of human rights organizations, civil society organizations that had problems in registration. They couldn't be registered because of reasons, various reasons.
In 1994, ICJ Kenya, together with the Law Society of Kenya, LSK, and the Human Rights Commission, drafted a model constitution for Kenya, which added to the pressure on the government of former President Daniel Arap Moi to enact a new constitution.
Kenya, the real question was what we were to do about constitutional reform. In fact, I recall at the time ICJ became one of the very first institutions to produce a draft constitution from scratch, a draft constitution. And the idea then was to try and generate debate and make the matter topical and make it relevant so that the whole, to galvanize action around this at that time.
ICJ was one of the leading organizations that agitated for the change of the law so that there will be inclusiveness in governance in Kenya.
In 2000, ICJ Kenya published a report on the state of the freedom of information in Kenya, followed by a campaign for a Freedom of Information Bill, which resulted into the signing of the Access of Information Act into law. The bill increased public participation and an obligation on the government of the day to facilitate access to information.
Freedom of information. You remember that at that time you could not access information that was held by the state. But we were able to agitate to ensure that citizens accessed information that was held by the state or state actors.
ICJ Kenya has been supporting and continues to support and monitor judicial reforms initiatives to ensure transparent and independent processes of appointment are adhered to. The organization supported various access to justice initiatives, advocacy around selection of judges, including the Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, and the Supreme Court Judge, following the adoption of the new constitution in 2010.
The participation of ICJ Kenya in the task force on judicial reforms, which then went and eventually fed into the constitution that we know today, the 2010 constitution. The chapter on the judiciary was a joint effort between various stakeholders in the legal sector, and ICJ was one very, very active member.
ICJ has supported the accountability of crimes before the International Criminal Justice Mechanisms, recalling the role played at the ICC in relation to the 2007-2008 post-election violence.
And especially in following the 2007 election violence, where we had some of our leaders under trial in the ICC, we engaged with that mechanisms working with the lawyers for the victims, and just to ensure that there was semblance of justice in that mechanism.
ICJ Kenya was also given the mandate to monitor on behalf of the United Nations Mechanism on International Tribunals the trials by the Rwandan National Courts of cases that would have otherwise been tried by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda.
The UN approached us. Those trials were not, could not begin without putting in place a trial mechanism, and so there was some urgency. So we put in an updated and renewed bid, and that is how we ended up as ICJ Kenya signing a memorandum of understanding with the UN mechanism. It is a sign of confidence in the approach that we had put in place. It is also a sign of confidence in our competence as an organization to monitor those cases.
The organization further provided technical support to the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission by providing independent critics of procedural elements as well as expert testimony on thematic elements.
And of course, we also engaged with the TJRC mechanism, which was seeking to address historical injustices in Kenya land issues.
ICJ was involved in those efforts to bring accountability, to bring truth, to push for reparations for victims, for victims of human rights violations that had happened in the past.
In 2013, on behalf of victims of sexual violence following the 2007 general elections, ICJ Kenya, together with the organizations, instigated a court of action against the Kenyan government in alleging failure to protect them or investigate the crimes committed against them.
The role played by ICJ Kenya in addressing the human rights issues arising out of the post-election violence.
Initially, we were pushing for perpetrators or suspected perpetrators to be prosecuted through a domestic tribunal that had been recommended by the Waki Commission. And when that did not materialize, we pushed for the ICC to get involved in bringing to accountability those who had been suspected of causing the violence.
The organization has also bravely and consistently condemned extrajudicial killings that have happened over the years.
We have agitated quite a bit on extrajudicial killings. We have filed suit. We have done a lot in ensuring that the police and the relevant authorities are held to account. And we, together with the Committee on Criminal Justice at the Judiciary, we are working towards to ensure that that happens, and the police are held to account for all the deeds that they do contrary to the law and the standing orders.
The implementations of petty offences contained in the Penal Code and county laws, such as being idle and disorderly, were implemented to the detriment of key populations.
We came up with the report on decriminalization of poverty and the question of petty offences, which has been taken up by the National Judicial Reforms Committee, because the current debate on which is going on is how do we decriminalize these petty offences that are still remaining in our statutes and which have been used to harass and they affect the people who are really poor.
ICJ Kenya has also continued to host the Juries of the Year Award since 1993 that seeks to give recognition, acknowledgement and encouragement to juries who have consistently, fearlessly and impartially promoted the rule of law and human rights in Kenya during the year. Some of the reformists who have received the award include Makueni Governor Kifuta Kibwana, Feroz Norji, retired Chief Justice Willy Mutunga, John Jamue, Honorable Justice Njoki Ndung'u, and Honorable Justice Mumbi Ngugi, among others. ICJ Kenya is determined to deepen its interventions as it celebrates 60 years of existence and continues looking for innovating approaches that is informed by cutting-edge research intended to scale up its successes, best practices at the international, regional, and domestic level, whilst maintaining consistency, professionalism, and impartiality in the conduct of our work.
And of course, as ICJ and forward thinking as leaders, we agreed, and of course we have invested in having the ICJ House to cushion the mere existence of the organization, because when you have a house which you call a home, at least the mere fact of having a residence gives you assurance that the organization will always be there.
In the next decade or so, we hope to maintain our brand, our flagship as a premier human rights institution in the region, to grow in size so that we can have more impact on society. And there will be challenges, because as you grow, there's also opposition. There's also people whose toes you step on when you are doing good. And we are braced for that because we have survived the 60 years so far.
I think it remains a very vibrant body. It is doing a very good job, in my opinion. But I think it is also important that people like me should step aside to give another generation an opportunity to bring fresh ideas and reinvigorate the institution. So I miss it in a way, in that I'm not in the leadership, but I don't in a way because I am very involved as an ordinary member.